Yeah, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of the knowledge series, Future of Fintech. As part of the nasscom India Fintech Awards, the objective of this series is to gain insights and trends on what's coming up in the fintech space. So, parallelly, also we have been inviting applications for awards under various categories of fintech like lending, payment, insurance, retail banking, etc. The link of which would be available to all of you in the chat section in the due course of the event. Today's session, we focus on innovation in insurance in the Indian fintech space. And there's a good reason to believe that insurance is indeed headed towards the part of disruptive innovation. With the rise of sharing economy, uncertainties building up across global economies. So we have with us two eminent speakers in a fireside chat format, and we'll take up questions from the audience after the fireside chat. So I would now request Arun Mallavarapu of Fedo to have a chat with Chetan Garga of Allstate, MD, and to give us more insurance insights into what's happening in the insurance tech space. Over to you, Arun.
Great. Thanks, Aryan. And thanks, Chetan, for taking the time out to chat with us today. Right? So, Chetan, first up, we all know that the insurance industry is different in different markets. You have been closely associated with the insurance industry in North America and now with India. What are some of the key differences between these two markets, the North American market and the Indian market?
Sure. Hey, first of all, thanks, Arun and Arihant, for inviting me for this fireside chat. It's an honor and privilege. So, really happy to be here and to share my thoughts. You're right, Arun. The markets are different and different from various angles, different from the angles of maturity, different from the angles of the regulator, who plays a really important role across both markets.
Right.
And also the appetite for insurance. For example, India is a very underinsured market in general. Even if you look at auto insurance, which is a compulsory requirement, there are still people who don't renew their insurances or don't buy it, etc. And they manage to get away, or they'll buy minimal insurance, just third-party insurance versus buying comprehensive, which is really the requirement. So I'll give you a few areas of context to drive home the point. For example, in the US, in the auto insurance space, the insurance is for the vehicle and for the driver, right? And it depends on the driver's past history, driving behavior, demerit points, etc. And that, along with the value of the vehicle, determines their complete insurance. To the point that they can even take their insurance with them to another vehicle. Right? If they want to drive another vehicle, they can be added on, the insurance can be looked at, and then they pay a margin if the vehicle is of higher value. Or very often you would see that they will take it to a rental car, right? And the rental car, they don't need to buy any fresh insurance if that car is the same value as the previous one. In India, as we know, it's very different because in India, it's the car which is insured rather than the driver. In fact, many of us have drivers who will drive our vehicle, and if you change the driver, the insurance doesn't change at all, right? Versus getting a very experienced driver or a new driver. So it's the vehicle which is insured really, and whoever drives the vehicle gets insured with the vehicle. So it's a very different concept, right? The other is, I think the markets in India are still maturing versus in the US, it is fairly mature in the whole claims process. There is a level of opacity in the Indian markets. And so there are also these situations where people can do some deals with the garage and other things and get their claims covered. Whereas in the more mature markets, that's not easily possible. The third area is around using data and analytics. So in India, the regulator has still not reached there, although I think they are looking at various options and models, looking at telematics, looking at how do we make it more customized. In the US, you can use data and analytics to basically capture driving behavior of individuals and then determine what is each individual's risk profile, and based on that, customize premiums for them. So I think there are lots of nuances. It's just a maturity aspect. And I think India is getting there slowly but surely.
Great, great. And that's very insightful, Chetan. And understandably, the Indian market is evolving, given where we have been from an economy standpoint, as well as where US has been, right? Or the mature markets have been. However, we understand inherently that still insurance is not a very easy business, right? I mean, be it travel, be it health, life, correct? It's it's very difficult to convince consumers to kind of buy an insurance policy, both in the Indian context as well as in the retail health US, for example, right? Uh, the question becomes like, what are industry players doing to differentiate themselves, and at the same time how is Allstate doing this better than others?
Sure. So first of all, insurance is risk mitigation, right?
Hmm.
And it basically comes into play when an incident happens, and somebody is basically trying to ensure that that incident does not cause a serious impact to their lives. Now, insurance is not something you want, or
Mm.
rather
Right.
something, something that you'll go out and buy very actively, saying, hey, I want to buy a phone, right? So I'm going to look at different models and buy a phone with a lot of interest, right?
Mm.
Insurance is more often something that you have to have, which has been determined by the regulator, by the government, and by other bodies, right? So it doesn't have that attraction that someone goes out willingly and buys it. And if you look at insurance in its most basic sense, right, which is risk mitigation, insurance
Hmm.
does not give you any return, or
Correct.
protects you from an incident, whether it's a home insurance, a car insurance, a life insurance, right?
Hmm.
I know a lot of institutions have created products like ULIPs in India, unit linked insurance plans, etc., which create a
Hmm.
return. But the original intent with insurance was just purely risk mitigation. Now, just imagine this, right? You're spending to buy something which you don't want, which you hope
Hmm.
never is needed, right?
Right.
And you get no return on it.
Exactly.
So it's like a cash burn, right?
Hmm.
And why would somebody want it? And this is an issue the world over. It's not unique to India,
Right.
right? So that way, to your first question, insurance is not something somebody's going out willing to say, hey, I want to buy insurance with a lot
Hmm.
of passion and interest, right? They're saying, okay, I have to buy it. So what's the cheapest one which gives me my needs? And so
Hmm.
we cater for it. Now, how are companies trying to address this, given the fact that insurance is a necessity, um, and people have to buy it? How do we make life easier for customers so that they are more interested in taking it? It reduces a lot of their hassle
Hmm.
and discomfort and delay, pain, etc., etc. If you look at the insurance policy and the whole insurance engagement with customers, right, there are really three parts to it. One is the price discovery. How does a customer get the best price or for what they want, right?
Hmm.
And price discovery has now become much more evolved with portals like Policy Bazaar in India,
Hmm.
and there are similar portals the world over. In fact, we have a portal called Answer Financial,
Hmm.
which allows you to discover what your insurance premium is going to be for a plain vanilla kind of policy, and you can look at 5 different suppliers, put in a few common details, and get it. So price discovery is number one. How can we make that easier? I mean, if you bought insurance 5, 7, 10 years ago, you'd have to call up each of these people, repeat the same details, get a quote, and then
Right.
make a list in your book or table, and then compare. And then there'll always be nuances with policies, right? Or with the way they quote. There'll be
Hmm.
some inclusions, some exclusions, and all that.
Hmm.
So that has been one pain point, which I think with the portals has gone away. The price discovery part.
Hmm.
The second part is when you actually go in to get a quote. Historically, you'd have to spend 15 minutes in filling up a lot of details, right from when you were born to your family details to where you live, etc., etc. Just a ton of stuff,
Hmm.
right? Now companies have got smarter and just asked for 3 or 4 basic questions, or ask 3 or 4 basic questions, got 3 or 4 basic data points, use that to give a quote, saying it's a quote as in it's only directional, it's not firm, but then when you give all the details, you'll get the final quote. It allows you to at least get an idea of what your premium is going to be. And Lemonade, for example, a company in the US, has done that phenomenally well.
Right.
Lemonade is a company in the US which only offers home and renters insurance. So it's a very
Hmm.
small market, but they have made that experience so easy, right? It takes like a few seconds to fill in
Hmm.
3 or 4 details and you get a quote, right? So that's great. So that's the second part in terms of buying insurance and how do you make that easy. Then comes the aspect of how do you customize it? So typically insurance works on demographics, right? It says, okay, if all people of this age, let's say 25 years old, living in a certain vicinity and have a certain risk profile, and that's how we price it. Now, in the case of like auto insurance using telematics, which is using a lot of data and analytics and capturing driving behavior, we are able to customize it for each driver based on their risk profile. To the point that now we are offering insurance in the US on a per kilometer or per mile basis. So no longer does one have to buy it for 6 months or in India for 1 year, right? I mean, just imagine if in the pandemic, you couldn't move, you were in lockdown for 3 months, right? And you're paying insurance. It's money, right? Now, if you can pay per mile or per kilometer, it's fantastic. So in fact, we introduced a product in the US and we've done it for a few years now called MileWise, where we basically allow you to pay on a per mile basis, and we cap it such that it'll never exceed what your 6 monthly or annual insurance would be in at all. So you have the best of both worlds, right? And then the fourth one is the claims process, and claims is where the rubber hits the road, right? Because that can be really, really painful, and that can make a customer who's been loyal to a company for years totally shun the company because of that experience. Right. And what companies are doing, and what we've done as well, is to try to make that whole process as smooth as possible, as contactless, and as quick in terms of responsiveness, right? And in some ways, the pandemic has accelerated the take-up of the whole thing. So we have products called quick photo claims. We can take photographs on our app of the whole vehicle, send it up, upload them, and based on that, within 24 hours, we can settle a claim. So no longer do you have to send your car to a garage or to a mechanic or whatever and wait for hours for an adjuster to come in, etc. And then in addition, we also use something called virtual assist, which takes a video of the whole thing. And online, you can talk to an adjuster and to a garage and settle whatever is the claim and move forward. So these are some of the innovations, call it, or just the way forward in the digital transformation journey for most companies. And I read a very interesting article on travel insurance, which I thought was really exciting, which is, so again, travel insurance, the issue is that you take a flight, if the flight is delayed or whatever, then you got to file a claim, and it's a very painful process. It goes into ether. You don't even know if you'll get a response. But there's a company, I believe in Singapore, which says that if you have an auto insurance, travel insurance with us, give us your flight details. We will track the flights. And if that flight is delayed or meets those criteria, we will automatically send you your claim. You don't need to do anything.
Oh, wow.
Now, that's the kind of experience if you get as a customer, say, okay, that makes my life really easy. I'll buy travel insurance from you because you're protecting my interest. And I think those are the win-wins that we will see more of as we move forward.
Right. And I think you hit it straight on the nail when you said getting information about the customer's driving behavior, etc., is very important. Just making that a little bit broader, right? Customer data is extremely important in delivering personalized experiences for them, right? But in other areas of insurance, lines of business of insurance, be it health, life, right, a little bit in auto as well, there seems to be a lack of trust for the reasons that we discussed earlier, wherein we are not getting an immediate return out of the payment that we are making. But there seems to be an inherent lack of trust between the customers and insurers. How are insurers looking to build greater trust with their customers, and any experiences that you can share where it makes it better?
So, we all have had this experience where we give data, even just in, let's say, when you buy a laptop or a white good, right? And the next, you have a call center person calling you with all kinds of products. Do you want to buy insurance? Do you want to buy some new banking product, et cetera, et cetera? And I think that's where our disdain with sharing information has been, that it just gets used in a fashion that is mass shared. And then you get all these calls, unsolicited calls that you don't want, and it becomes a pain. So actually what's happening is now in the US has been driving it, but I think in Europe as well, with GDPR and things like that, right? With the Data Protection Acts, there is now much more control over what data you can capture for customers, and how can you use that data, and even how many copies of the data you keep and what you do with it. So I think as these become much stronger, and I think India is also on the same path of strengthening the whole Data Protection Act, it will give customers much more confidence that the data will be used for the right reasons.
Right.
But here's the dichotomy, right, Arun? We use Google, we use Yahoo, we use Amazon, and we give our data without any concern, right?
Exactly.
We give key data because
Mhm.
we believe we give that data because we believe we're going to get some value from it, whether you
Mhm.
use Google for searching or to buy products, etc., etc. So on one side, the customer wants that data to be given so that it makes their experience better,
Mhm.
but they also don't want the data to be abused in a fashion which then inundates them with all kinds of products, calls, etc. And there's a very fine line as to where do you cross, because some of those products they want,
Mhm.
right? And they're
Mhm.
basically signed up saying, yes, I'm interested in the travel industry, I'm interested in the banking industry, or whatever, right? Now, where do you draw the line between what product is something they want and are willing to share the information, and which product is a nuisance for them, correct?
Mhm. Right.
And I think that's where people are grappling as to where that line is. Because today, honestly, we've all given our data to Google. It
Mhm.
knows everything through Gmail and through Google Maps and all that. And we don't want it, we'll get a ping saying, hey, you're near this place that you liked, or you're going to travel on so and so date. Have you got your car booked and all that, right? They kind of
Right.
tell you all those things, and you wonder, hey, how do they know?
Mhm.
But they know.
Yeah. True. So, coming back to the Oscar story, right, where Oscar has done something really well, and there are a couple, sorry, Lemonade, and I think Oscar has done similar things in the health side. Lemonade is doing in the home and auto side to an extent, and Trove, right? All of these guys are pushing the entire uh, boundaries for embracing digital, right? How are incumbents looking at becoming lighter, more agile, right? And using data and to become more digital? It isn't easy for incumbents to kind of become as agile as smaller players are doing today. So, what are some of your thoughts around that?
So, first of all, I don't think there's a choice, right? If you don't do it, you'll probably not exist in
Right.
5 years or so. So, I think there's a necessity as
Mhm.
much as anything else. I can share with you the way Allstate is doing it.
Okay.
We are on a journey, on a transformative growth journey, where we're looking at this whole digitization and digital platform afresh.
Okay.
And we're looking at it in a fashion that we try to minimize the legacy of what we've been doing, but while we keep our customers as well as we keep the loyalty and the brand value that we have, because that's been a huge asset for us,
Mhm.
right? So as we move forward on the transformation journey, we are putting in a lot of data analytics, right? I mean, if you look at historically, insurance was all about actuaries and data, right? And you had these actuaries who would study from premium institutions, and there are very few of them, and they would pour over tons of data, millions of records to figure out what the products are, the premiums are, and so on, right? But
Mhm.
now with data analytics, you don't need the actuaries, right? You can do it in a smooth, automated fashion, and only for the extra exceptions go to the actuaries. And by this, I don't mean that we have to do with actuaries and it kind of is the death knell for them, but it's more to the fact that you can create products much quicker, much faster.
Correct.
And if you think of in the US, one of the things I didn't mention earlier is that in the US, each state is regulated by a different regulator.
Yes.
So 50 states have got 50 regulators, right?
Yes.
So if we are in the US with 50, with all of the US of A, right, we have to file our prices and things with each regulator and
Mhm.
explain why we are doing the pricing and so on, right?
Right.
And that, as you create a new product, becomes a nightmare if you have to then tweak it based on feedback and questions and all that. So data analytics is a very, very important part of this journey of how can you work with the regulators, create new products,
Mhm.
and then, as I mentioned earlier, the customization for each customer.
Mhm.
We have an ad. If you get a chance, you should have a look at it on YouTube. But we have this person who is on an island. He has a vehicle. He puts his teapot on the cooker to kind of make his tea, right? And then he goes out in his vehicle. He goes and buys bread from the bakery. He goes to the fish market, buys a fish, comes back. He's in time for his cooker, for his tea to get hot, right? And he pours himself a cup of tea. He looks at his phone. He's being charged 8 cents for that whole trip. So one is we've been able to customize it for the individual. We are able to do it on a per mile basis. It's
Mhm.
on your cell phone. You just have to say, okay, I've started my journey. You go and come back and it says, okay, 8 cents you have to pay for this trip. It makes it so simple, right?
Mhm.
And that simplicity. So an important part of what we are all looking at is how do we keep the customer at the center of what we do?
Right.
Typically, most of the companies have worked around their processes, and they've told the customer, hey, this is our process, you need to follow it.
Correct.
That game is changing to what can we do to make the customer's life easy and make everything centric to the customer. That's a big change that we are seeing. And again, a lot of companies like ourselves, we are on that journey. So in fact, we have a vision where with the customer at the center, we want to be the lowest cost auto insurer, and we want to offer a circle of protection to customers. One other thing which I'm sure has not been lost to most of us, and especially the new generation, people aren't buying cars and houses as much,
Correct. Correct.
right? So
Right.
what is your most important physical asset today? It's your phone, it's your
The
laptop.
phone, laptop, digital assets. Yeah.
And without that, you can't survive. I mean, we don't remember anybody's numbers, right? So if we don't have a phone, we don't even know how we can call someone.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we are looking at that and saying, how can we get to customers to offer them products which are more intrinsic to what they need today, rather than what was there 5 years. So we have a product, we bought a company 3 years back called Square Trade, which offers warranty on white goods and mobile phones and laptops and tablets and everything, right? To the point that if your phone were to get damaged, right, or even lost, within 2 hours, we can get you a replacement phone or fix your phone and get you back on track.
Wow.
Now that's the kind of thing that customers will be looking for, because that's what they need is.
Yes.
Today,
Right.
what is our biggest fear and risk besides life, right? It is about our online presence, right? We are always worried, is somebody going to impersonate us, get into a bank account, clean out our money? Or we are hearing about all these frauds with OLX and this, that, and other things, right?
Right.
And our online identity is a bit at huge risk. So in fact, we bought a company called InfoArmor, which gives you online protection and protects your identity online. So the reason I'm sharing this is that even the legacy companies are looking at what are the needs today for customers and how do we adapt ourselves and change ourselves to meet those needs and give more holistic protection rather than just the typical of life, home, auto, medical, etc. So I think that's the way companies are transforming.
Yeah, that's a great example. There's some really good examples, Chetan. And I know you have been a senior leader for several years now, right? And the kind of changes that you have said are kind of difficult to accomplish in larger established organizations, you might know, right? So how do you drive that change, and what has worked, like pushing something through within the organization and making that change, and what has worked for you in getting that done?
So I think it's a combination of organic and inorganic, right?
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
we've acquired some companies like Square Trade 3 years back, InfoArmor 2 years back, because that acquisition allows us to leapfrog and to get into the market quicker than if we were to do it ourselves, right?
Right.
But having said that, we are also transforming our basic product around auto and home insurance. And this has been possible through a deep reflection on what is it that our customers really want. So, for example, auto insurance is a very price sensitive market, right? Whether we like it or not, the bells and whistles may be nice for a few people, but the majority of the market is very price sensitive, right? So then we basically have to make sure that we can compete on that requirement of customers, right? While also offering them what they expect from a brand. So we have now gone on this journey of becoming the lowest cost auto insurer. And this is being driven by the chairman down, right? So the chairman of the company came together with the leadership, said, okay, if we really need to be in the top 2 or top 3 in this market, we have to do this, right? And we have to, in some ways, cannibalize our markets, in some ways, have some really strong medicine that we take to correct our courses and do what we need to do. But yeah, unless we do that, I think, like you highlighted, the new players, right, are going to come in. They don't have any baggage and legacy, and they're just going to drive home.
Yeah. So in my view, right, the way I look at Oscar, Lemonade, Trove, etc., is probably like what Progressive was about a decade ago, right? How it came into the market and it started uh, innovative business models, right, and made it more customer centric at that point in time, made it more easy. So it's another wave of that, where we are seeing this is probably more coupled with deeper tech than it was available there. But it's again the point that we are looking at is what is the opportunity in probably a market like North America, right? For insurtechs or deep tech driven organizations who are, what kind of challenges should they be looking at solving, given that there is a need for insurers to become more customer centric, and there is a need given the pandemic that the life of insurers and customers should become better.
Sure. So I think, first of all, as I explained earlier, there were these 3 or 4 steps, right? So
Mhm.
how can we make the price discovery easy, right? And that is
Right.
happening. In fact, you're right that Progressive was ahead in their time,
Mhm.
but are they still ahead today is a question mark, right? Because the
Right.
new players are coming in and basically changing the model. So
Mhm.
Progressive was one of the first which went in without any agents and agencies. They just went
Correct.
online, right?
Correct.
That was good for that time, but today now that's a default,
Mhm.
right? That's just hygiene, right? You have to have an online presence along with if you want agents, so that's already there. But then if you take it further, right, this aspect of customizing it for each individual and their driving behavior, right? Now, what is the next step there? So I had played a video at a NASScom conference a couple of weeks back, which showed the perfect situation where a claim was being processed. And I'll just explain it to you in words. And if you get a chance, please have a look at it and the audience out as
Sure.
well. But there's this situation where a car comes out of the parking lot and another car is following it and it gets hit, right? For the first car, it has all the technology in the vehicle. Basically, the onboard computer says your car is not drivable. Okay. And we
Mhm.
are taking it, it's not drivable, so you need to stop. Then it says, okay, where are you going? So the guy says, the person driving says, I'm going to so and so place. They said, okay, can we arrange an Uber for you? Right? He says, yes. So they get an Uber car for him. Okay. Second, they say, okay, we are sending a drone down to capture images of the damage, right? And then we'll make sure that the claim process is all done for you. So they ask him, are you good with that? He says, yes. The drone comes in, takes pictures of the whole vehicle, uploads the images, shows it to them, says, are these pictures good? He says, yes. Okay, done. Your claim process started. Then they say, okay, now that your vehicle is can't be moved or can't move forward, we're going to send a tow truck for you to take care of that, right? And so he says, okay, and the tow truck comes. So the Uber car comes at the same time as the tow truck comes, and then they tell him, hey, don't forget to leave the keys of your vehicle in your vehicle, okay? And so he says, oh yeah, right. And he throws his keys in the vehicle, gets into the Uber, goes and does his work, and everything's taken care of. Now just imagine, right?
Mhm.
In today's world, that is not impossible. All these
Right.
components exist.
Mhm.
How do we tie them together is really the essential,
Exactly.
right? And if you are able to tie them together, then you make that experience for a customer so seamless and so complete. The
Mhm.
customer says, hey, this is great. I can continue with my work. I don't have the hassle of filling out papers and other things, etc. The claims process is done. My car's been taken care of to a tow truck, by a tow truck to a garage. Great. And in the same video, you can also see the other vehicle who is calling up his insurance company and is there on the AVR, the IVR, right? Interactive voice system,
Mhm.
and basically
Mhm.
still saying English. And my name is so and so. And he's still stuck in that initial stage that we've all experienced, right, with call centers.
Mhm.
It's such a huge difference. So, where I'm going with this is that technology is there today to make the complete experience so smooth and seamless, right? To the point that, let's say there's a family, and in the family there's been a child who's been born, right? And then after 18 years, when the child is ready to drive, the company knows and says, hey, your child is ready to drive, should we add him to your insurance, right?
Mhm.
And just makes that whole experience so personalized. I think
Correct.
that's where it
Right.
will make it much more effective.
Great. And then you brought in some really good points about integrating different services and technologies that are available. I think the way the world is going towards is open frameworks, APIs, and collaboration, right? And that is going to be the center of product design going forward, right? And service delivery. Now, how is Allstate approaching this new era? That's one question I have. And the second is, how difficult is it to, from a cultural barrier perspective, because all of these components are more insurtech players who are working more in an agile mode. What, from a cultural barrier perspective, how difficult is it to work with some of these guys?
It is tough. And I will say this because let's say within the Allstate environment, we have veterans who've been there for so many years,
Mm.
15, 20, even 30 years, right?
Right, right.
And who are so used to working and thinking in a particular way that it's a difficult change,
Mm.
right? Which is why the inorganic route of buying the
Mm.
capability and the company and talent is the way forward for many cases. Sorry, and I think that's where there is a huge opportunity for the insurtechs, because
Mm.
if I think about it, the company we bought, Square Trade, it was like a startup, right?
Mm.
Which maybe it was started about 7, 8, 10 years ago, but it was a smallish company in that sense, and we bought it. And now with the Allstate brand and etc. and offering, it just makes it allows it to go much further. Similarly, we bought this company InfoArmor, which was again a 100% company doing
Mm.
online identity protection, right? And then because we realized that if we have to do it ourselves, it take long. So I think the change in an existing company and the legacy which it carries is tough, which is why the acquisition part is a very, very important part of how companies are going to have to move forward.
Mhm.
On the
Mhm.
side of the insurtechs, right? I
Mhm.
think very often I have seen that they have a great idea and a great product, but they're not always thinking of it from the customer's perspective or the business perspective, or
Mhm.
they may not understand the business domain as well,
Okay.
right? And I
Mhm.
think that aspect needs to be bridged in some fashion, uh,
Right.
because they have some great technology. I mean, I've seen companies which have some great technology around, let's say, like face recognition, body recognition, etc.,
Mm.
to be able to identify damage, right?
Mm.
But then, how does it actually work for the customer, and how do you integrate it with the system which makes the claims process seamless?
Right.
Becomes the important part.
Great. And I think that leads us into the AI ML discussion. I think no discussion in today's world can be without AI ML, right?
Totally.
Uh, so AI ML as a technology, and what I've seen is has multiple use cases across different functions within insurance, from underwriting to fraud detection to possibly claims, also predictions and auditing. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in this regard? Like, where is the adoption of AI/ML more among insurers? Where is it less? Are there any certain pockets where insurers are more willing to adopt this?
I think insurers are willing to adopt it across the board, right from targeted marketing and sales
Mm-hmm.
to seeing who is having what chat on a social media platform
Mm-hmm.
and what their interests are, to again looking at pricing insurance using AI/ML for the individual,
Mm-hmm.
looking at fraud detection, looking at prescriptive analytics to
Mm-hmm.
even figure out which pockets and which geographies will have a high tendency.
Right.
For example, if you look at home insurance and you look
Mm-hmm.
at catastrophes and tornadoes and hurricanes and stuff in the US, right, cyclones,
Mm-hmm.
etc., use a lot of that predictive analytics to really figure out where damage is going to be, what the impact is going to be if this intensity tornado comes in, and to
Mm-hmm.
try to minimize it and eliminate it,
Mm-hmm.
right, upfront. And then IoT, right? Just the whole
Right.
IoT in homes and stuff to try to again predict
Mm-hmm.
before incident happens. Because if the incident happens, it has a 10x or 20x cost of repair, plus the hardship. So I think AIML is just running through. In fact, we believe we have one of the strongest AIML teams around data analytics
Mm-hmm.
in the US, which is really constantly looking at data with the billions of records of data that we have with driving behavior, etc., to
Mm-hmm.
constantly churn it and look at products, pricing, and trying to prevent damage. Our biggest focus is not so much to get customers and to earn premium and then to pay claims. It's to avoid the incident in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
When seatbelts came out in the 60s, we were one of the first insurance companies to get our customers to buy seatbelts and put on seatbelts, and we would give even a consideration for that in the insurance policy.
Wow.
So
Mm-hmm.
prevention is much more important for us than trying to collect premium and pay out and things like that.
And so, are the regular incentivization of customers for having a good driving behavior, etc., comes in automatically, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Now that makes it more, brings the whole insurance experience more, becoming, as you said earlier, more customer centric, becoming more customer centric. You have given good examples, but what we have seen is customer demands keep evolving over time,
Yep.
right? And like about a few years back, probably it was being able to access things. Now it is being very comfortable experience and personalized experience. How do you see demands evolving over time, and how do you quickly adapt to such changes?
So that's a tough one because customer demands are changing. All of us are changing.
Right,
Our demands for shopping is changing. Our demand for banking is changing, right?
right.
The way we are looking at it is how do we keep close to our customers
Mm-hmm.
to understand the evolving needs. Also, see the needs are, if you segment the market, different customers have different needs,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Correct.
So I'll give you again our example. So we were typically a very agent and agency oriented auto insurer selling only through agents and agencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we are moving much more to the direct channel and online.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that the customer who want to come to an agent has gone away. There are still customers who would prefer to talk to an agent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to go to an agent's office. So we are doing more of segmentation of the market to say, right, that is also there. And maybe there's a different cost structure for it because,
Mm-hmm.
it costs us more to have an agent and agency. So the pricing will be slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
But we have that. We have the online channel, right? We have a mixed channel as well. You could come in online, but you could also use a agent for some of your needs, etc. So I think what we need to look at is the whole spectrum, right? And it's really a spectrum. It's not black or white.
Mm-hmm.
And basically making sure that we can cater for everybody's needs in the way they want to access and purchase insurance or settle a claim, etc., and keep it happy. So that's why the customer at the center, and recognize the customer is right from a 18-year-old to an 80-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
and each coming with a different background. We just need to make sure that we are here listening to everyone and creating something which works for each of them.
Right. Right. And that's true. And I have seen customers being more open to share information about driving behavior or probably shopping experience than personal health and life,
Yeah.
right? And that throws a curveball at those lines of businesses where if you're looking at driving personalization and becoming more customer centric, you are you still have to bridge that gap of getting the customer to open up to you. How are some of the players doing that in the US, for example?
So it's, again, I think we've all seen this um, with the pandemic.
Hmm.
Nobody's, or people are avoiding hospitals and doctors, but we
Right.
still need medical care.
Hmm.
And so we are going online to have online consultation.
Hmm.
And we are sharing information that you typically be much more careful about as part of the online consultation. We're going to third parties like be it a Practo or whoever, right?
Hmm.
So I think there is a willingness to share now. Where the risk is that if that information is used or abused in
Hmm.
a wrong way, and people take advantage of it, that's where we have to be careful. And I think most governments and regulators are very, very watchful about it,
Hmm.
which is why even the Indian Data Protection Act is coming into play,
Right.
where there's going to be controls saying that, okay, if you're getting people's personal data and medical history, right, it
Hmm.
cannot be shared and cannot be used as a targeting way to sell medicines and blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And see, here's again the dichotomy, right? We want to keep our medical records in a place that we can access wherever we go, to whichever hospital or whichever doctor, right? You don't want
Yes.
to carry your records and your files and your films everywhere.
Hmm.
You need that digital locker, if I may call it, to
Right.
keep it in one place. And then when you go to hospital B, A or B, you want to open that locker, give them the data to use, right? And then not have to go through the whole thing again as paper, and then lock it
Hmm.
up there, and you go to maybe another specialist C and show it to them. I think as we move forward and the concept of digital lockers is gaining more currency,
Hmm.
right? Where you can keep your insurance policy in digital lockers today, not your medical records so much. But I think
Hmm.
there are some hospitals I've seen which ask for consent to
Hmm.
keep the digital records. But whether they share it with you or with others is still a question mark. I think somewhere that has to evolve, and maybe that's an opportunity. Can
Hmm.
we create digital locker for medical records where you just give each hospital you go to your
Hmm.
key number, and like an Aadhaar number, it's only a
Hmm.
one-way upload, right? It's kept in a digital locker, and
Hmm.
then you can decide whom to share it with based on where your need is.
Right. And I think that's a perfect use case for blockchain as well, because
Yeah.
that will bring in the security that is needed to make sure that people are able to share to only people they want to share with rather than everybody else having access. Great. And I think one other thing, given insurtechs, right? And we have had discussions about this. What would be your advice for insurtechs to deliver impact within the insurance industry?
Yeah, we've dealt with a few insurtechs, and what we've noticed is that uh, the appreciation for the demands in global markets or international markets,
Mm-hmm.
that appreciation is not there. For example, we work with a company where we're looking at a device which you can connect to the
Mm-hmm.
car diagnostic behavior, right? It's like a dongle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at this product, we even evaluated in the US in our labs and stuff. But we found that just could not cater for the needs of global environments. Just, even the cold,
Okay.
uh, the heat, and if it's
Mm-hmm.
used continuously, can it work, right? Um, so I think that appreciation, if you want to play in the international markets, is very important, right? Especially with the physical product side of things.
Right.
On the services side, again, we have to recognize the nuances of the markets and what their pain points are.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than coming with a product which we believe is good and then trying to force fit it to a requirement, it's got to be the other way, which is what are the pain points of a particular environment or market, and then taking that pain point into consideration, how do we address it? So I think we have to change uh, the approach to some
Okay.
extent.
Okay. Great. I think that's a lot of the questions that I had for you from this session. I will now go with a quick fire round, Chetan, with you.
Sure.
A few questions about to know you better. So, mountains or beaches?
Mountains.
Best book?
I was just reading this book, The Shoe King, right?
Mhm.
Found that very interesting.
Favorite movie?
Dil Chahta Hai,
First crush?
long time ago.
Preferred drink?
Single malt whiskies.
AI or blockchain?
Sorry, say that again?
AI or blockchain?
AI at this point,
Bungee jumping or coffee?
coffee.
Long term or short term?
Long, medium term is what I would look at more.
Culture or process?
Culture.
Your winning mantra?
Do your best and leave it to the rest.
Good one. Your winning mantra? Play safe or go broke?
Depends. I play poker sometimes and I go both ways depending on which way the hand is looking and who's going.
Good. The most exciting innovation of recent times?
Um, I don't know if innovation, is the right word. There are a lot of process improvements that have become really, really interesting. I think in the medical field, there have been some really, really amazing innovations. I visited Israel a couple of years back, and I saw this company which is sending, um, rather than an endoscopy, is sending cameras through capsules into your system to take photographs. And then
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, that's amazing.
I thought that was like amazing, right?
Yeah.
So sorry, long-winded answer,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. What gives you a thrill?
well, a good book with a relaxed environment is one way of thrill. That is more of relaxation, I suppose. But a good drive on a nice road gives me great thrill.
What takes you off?
People promising to do things and it not happening.
Okay. The one thing you wish you had invented?
I wish I'd invented. Um, I don't know. A way to just, switch off everything and totally be in your own world, not have any thoughts coming into your head even to distract you.
Okay. The one thing which never fails to give you goosebumps?
Reptiles, snakes.
The most impeccable failure in recent times?
Impeccable failure. Well, it happens every time, actually. I think my weekend is there. I'm going to do a lot of good stuff. And I abysmally fail in doing all that I thought I would.
Great. Last one. The main ingredient for success?
Hard work.
I think that's all I had. Thank you for answering all of these, Chetan.
Great. Thanks, Arun.
So now I think we should open it up for the audience and attendees. Arihant, you want to?
Yes, sure. We'll open up for questions from the audience. We already have a few questions. So let me read out. So this one is for Chetan. How has InsurTech changed in the past 5 years? What do you predict will happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay. I think that's like a crystal ball. If I could predict what's going to happen in the next 5, 10 years, I'd probably be in a different place. But I think AI ML has just changed the face of things, right? Looking at data analytics around it has made a huge change in insurtech. I just think that AI ML is going to go much further with predictive. And there was a model which I had, or which someone had shared with me a long time ago, which talked about how data becomes information, and then becomes at some point knowledge, and then becomes wisdom. And when do we get to wisdom, where we know exactly how things are going to happen and how the correlations are going to impact each other, and we start applying it? I think that's where it will be the nirvana or the holy grail. Uh, Hopefully that'll happen next 5, 10 years.
Sure. So, Chetan, you also mentioned about just to add to that question, you also mentioned about the future of insurtech and how it's picking up in India. So, what are the key 2 3 things that you see that we don't have a Medicare or a Medicaid like in the US, the CMS body and all. So, how do you see that? What are the key 2 3 changes that is needed in the Indian market to have that in place, and how much time do you foresee if all the regulations in are in place for that to happen, or will that happen at all?
Yeah, that's $1 million question. But I think medical insurance, and to be honest, the government has done a lot. The recent uh, Prime Minister Modi's government has done a lot of stuff to try to get people within the insurance umbrella. So I think the first part is education. In a lot of our minds in India, we don't look at insurance as a risk mitigation and protection vehicle or product. And I think it started with the whole life insurance piece, and the life insurance piece being something where you put in some money to save some tax before the financial year end, and you get a return on it. I think people are so used to now getting a return on insurance, which is not the way insurance was ever meant to be, right? And you get it only for life insurance. You don't get any return on either your car insurance, home insurance, medical insurance, travel insurance. So it's that whole education. And then India is a very underinsured market, right? The penetration of insurance is very low. So again, that education has got to be made for people to realize that we have to insure ourselves to protect our future. Because if we don't do it now, and something abnormal hits us or out of the blue hits us, we are not ready for it. So that is going to be the first part. And I think medical insurance similarly, we are very underinsured. People need to appreciate that insurance is an important part of our existence and for our continued support. That, along with the government having schemes for people who are below poverty line, etc., is going to help. Honestly, the cost of insurance in India and the cost of medical care in India is among the lowest in the world, right? And I think we don't realize it, but we are quite privileged to be in that space. But we need to also increase the coverage, because it's a volume game. See, if we have 30% people insured and the remaining are not, then the price of medical costs, etc., goes up. But if you have most people insured, right, the cost will come down, because there's a level of cross subsidy which happens. That's how insurance works, right? And again, it's in everybody's interest to just insure more. So I think insurance has got to become a mainstream education in some ways, and people have to realize and appreciate that they need it and go in and take it. That's an important part. Now, we have to bring our technology muscle and a technology strength to play in this, because if we can create things like this digital locker and capture medical data records, protect them appropriately, but make them available, we can avoid a lot of waste, because very often people are doing a lot of tests and other things which may not be needed, right? If you capture all your history and you put it there, you make it available, it avoids a lot of waste. The third part is that if you use then data analytics, and if you can capture people's history over 10, 20, 30 years, you can create patterns. And you can then help determine what their needs are from a medical insurance beat or a medical avoidance perspective, right? So I think there's a lot of potential there. We have to harness it.
Sure. So the next question is for Arun. What one piece of practical advice would you give to startups starting out in the insurance space?
Oh, good one. Again, as Chetan sometimes back told us, don't build the product and then try to fit it into the market. Rather, pick one problem within the insurance market, right? It could be customer onboarding, it could be underwriting, it could be wait times, it could be claims processing, right? Pick one problem and see if you could solve that. I think that resonates much better with insurers within India and globally rather than trying to say, okay, I have everything under the sun within insurance and go take my product, right? That doesn't really work well as well. That's my thought. Chetan, if you want to add, please feel free to add.
I agree with you totally. It has to be addressing a customer need versus we have this great technology. How can we apply it? It's like, you have a hammer and you're looking for a nail, right?
Mm.
I'd rather we identify which nail, how big or small it is, and then determine the hammer.
Right.
The next question is for Chetan. If you were to look at India market and you were open to acquisition, and which startup would you pick and why?
Well, that's a tough one. It depends on what customer need they are solving, right? We won't pick a startup just because it has some great new shiny technology. Unless we can find a use case for that technology and address a customer need, it'll be a really tough one.
Sure. So, with that, we come to the end of the fireside chat. And thank you, Arun, and thank you, Chetan, for making the session so engaging. Thank you, participants, for the wonderful engagement that we have. Look forward to having you again at our next session on innovation in digital lending the day after tomorrow. And thank you, Arun, and thank you, Chetan, for once again for being part of this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aryan. Thank you, Chetan, again.
Okay, thanks, Arun, Arihant. It's been a pleasure. Some really tough questions, but I hope I could answer them or at least give you some good insights and the audience some good insights. And if there are some insurtechs there, would love to talk to see what they have and how we can partner and move things forward.
Sure.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.